Ask almost any student how they prepare for a math exam, and the answer is usually identical. They memorize a massive list of formulas, drill standard problems, and cross their fingers that the test doesn't throw any curveballs. Walking into the exam room, they feel genuinely prepared. And why wouldn't they? They've put in hours of real effort, committing dozens of equations to memory. They have something concrete to show for their studying. Then they flip the page. They encounter a question on a familiar topic, but it's presented in a completely unexpected format. Or worse, the question suddenly asks them to combine two distinct concepts. They hit a wall of cognitive paralysis. They mentally scroll through that entire inventory of memorized formulas, desperately looking for a match, only to realize that none of them perfectly align with the words on the page. This demoralizing breakdown stems from confusing the final, memorized output of math with the actual logical process of doing it. Treating math as a collection of facts to be rote memorized creates a highly brittle system. It works well enough for predictable questions, but it instantly shatters the moment a problem deviates from the standard script. Every mathematical formula is a highly compressed shortcut, summarizing a concept that was already painstakingly reasoned out. This visualization shows exactly how this works. By splitting a rectangle exactly in half diagonally, we prove a triangle's area is half its base times height. When that triangle stretches and becomes highly skewed, the area remains tied to the same spatial logic. When you only memorize the shortcut, you are fine on familiar roads, but the exact moment the terrain of the problem changes, shortcuts become useless. You need the underlying map to navigate. In a testing environment, we can predictably trace exactly where formula-only studying breaks down. Word problems are always the first casualty. These problems require an abstract setup step to translate language into variables. Without a conceptual foundation, that translation step becomes impossible, and the student never even gets the chance to apply their formula. Multi-step equations are the second casualty. These questions force a student to chain 2 or 3 isolated concepts together in a single sequence, a task that requires seeing the connections between ideas, rather than keeping them in separate memorized silos. Now, contrast that with a student who has built true conceptual understanding. They can look at an unfamiliar problem, reason through the logic step by step, and reconstruct a working solution, even if their memory completely blanks on the specific equation. Reliability and flexibility under pressure serve as the true indicators of math ability. Moving past rote memorization requires a deliberate pivot in how a student studies. They have to stop collecting formulas and force a cognitive shift toward understanding the pure concept first. The first habit to build is simple but demanding. Spend a few minutes trying to logically reason through a new problem before ever looking at the related formula. Use logic to arrive at a solution, and only check the formula at the very end. The second habit comes into play when you make a mistake. Instead of just moving on, meticulously trace your steps back to diagnose whether you made a simple calculation mistake or if there was a gap in your conceptual logic. Doing this creates friction. Relying on pure reasoning feels significantly slower and much more difficult at first, compared to simply plugging numbers into an equation you already memorized. But that friction pays off. Working through the confusion builds the intellectual resilience required to handle the high-stakes, unpredictable variations found in major competitive exams. Real math capability is built through this kind of structured, concept-first practice. It's the core philosophy driving daily practice platforms like SMARTSA, ensuring that a student's skills remain intact and dependable long after the familiar shortcuts disappear.